Fuck that thing. I'm sorry. I'm way behind. I've all fucked up. Bad. Ill prepared, Jamie, today. Brand new. Somebody should write down the date and time. They caught me not being exactly perfectly on top of something, so we started a couple minutes late, and not too bad though. We'll get back on track. We can start off by recognizing our great sponsors, a couple other things, then we'll get into some pretty interesting conversations. Here we go.
As always, Jazz Cabbage Cafe is sponsored by Stone Depot, Redemption Cannabis, of course, Relief Solutions, Detroit Nutrient Company, GrowGreenMI.com, Custom 420 promos, including that awesome Culture clothing.
All right. Thank you. Let's see if we'll get maybe back to this again, because I really want to hype it up. This is a place I'm becoming pretty fond of lately. Retail store, Meds Cafe. There are 4 locations, and at all of them, there'll be this Halloween celebration. 2 of those locations are in Alpena and Rogers City, and Redemption Cannabis is going to be a part of it. And Rick will be doing the public appearance on their behalf. And so Rick and I will be hanging out on Friday in Alpena and Rogers City at Meds Cafe. So obviously there'll be an ensuing shift in plans around the state.
No, we're not that important.
And all that kind of stuff, but it will be very cool. And I'll try to make this known again. And really looking forward to it myself. And Kevin Pipus from True Cannabis and from Smoking Rope.
Hey, Kev. What's up, Kevin? How you doing?
Not bad, guys. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Always awesome.
Good.
Spartan chiming in. And old Anthony Freed. 3 wise men. There's actually 4 of us, so maybe that shows where Anthony is. I think Kevin came in just after he posted that. So, so I kind of wanted to tee up a further discussion on some of the stuff we've been talking about, Kevin, in terms of legislatively seeing. We talked about this last week too. Some language showing up in the bills for the Native American compact that questionable. We'll get into that, to say the least, and starting some conversation. But in the news, and there is a segue here. Most recently, the investigation into former Speaker of the House, Lee Chatfield, and in part for possibly favoring, cannabis companies and various ways. He was also under investigation for not properly using funds, spending it on, partying in Las Vegas. People have said hookers and cocaine. Whether or not all that stuff's been, definitely established, I don't know, but that was the discussion months ago, and it seems to have resurfaced now as this, part of the string of news about this situation and who it's extended to. And, so on the surface, and there's legislation that's involved too, how much was swayed. And in the story that's most recent and kind of talking about the favoring company is Urbana and Arbor's Wellness and stuff, but unclear what else might be involved, and and where other influences were at play. When you have the Speaker of the House kind of influenced by these forces, it's really scary to think about. And we've of course have assumed some of this at times, and just to have had to challenge it and call it out. But we're up against some pretty heavy forces, and a lot of people who understand the processes around Lansing and are more tied in than a lot of us, and hire the huge lobbying firms and PR firms and use their influences and black ops. And, we're up against a lot of challenges quite often, when these things happen. But this was exposed. A lot of people definitely don't like it. And, part of that story toward the end of last session, and when Chatfield was the Speaker, and some of the stuff where we had to kind of step in, was about legislation designed to combine the medical and the rec licenses, and which is, on the surface a good idea, but it's always devils in the details. And they were working on this for a while without bringing it to the attention of many, stakeholders, as is a common issue, which we'll bring it up again in furthering in this story. And in that process, which was, reportedly done a lot between, Linder, Director Brisboe, I guess, as head of the department, wanting to streamline things. And so I'm not going to put any, negative, motivations on anybody who may not have them, but this is, what happened. He unusually was pushing a bill, and he talked about it. It's not like it's a secret or anything like that, but, somebody from the department pushing a particular legislation is, unusual. And a lot of the work was done in Chatfield's office. So, these things become really suspicious. The big money interest being represented, the department trying to push it, this being done in the speaker's house that we now know, or was likely anyway, involved in some corrupt activity. And in that process of combining licenses, there is a provision in the Commercial Medical Act that allows for some funding to go to state police for implementation, enforcement, and other things for the commercial medical program. And in that language, in that attempt, it never passed or anything, but in that discussion to combine those licenses, the idea was to bring that provision from the MMFLA into the fusion so that funding for police would continue on through MRTMA considerations. So in drafting of the MRTMA, while we did piggyback on a lot of components on the MMFLA to make transitions of the markets easier and that type of thing, the language to include funding for state police was very specifically excluded. We did not want that in there. The idea that they no longer had to use resources for this type of enforcement because we're legalizing it, we thought it was already advantage to them. And many of us, quite frankly, don't like their participation in a lot of the behaviors and processes and things, including when seizures were more out of control than they are now, and a lot of the really rough things that people had to endure, including some deaths and threats and really heavy-handed activity over cannabis. And so that was very purposeful. And the fact that they were bringing that, or trying to bring that from the MMFLA into this fusion of combining these licenses, was something that was, there was other things, but that was very much opposed. That was a big reason why, many of us were in opposition. And so here we are a couple of years later, that same provision to bring that kind of funding into the MRTMA shows up on these bills, on a bill to help create a compact between the tribal businesses and the commercial system already in the state, and it doesn't seem to be related at all. And its placement is and the language is very broad. It seems to go well beyond what was going on for the MMFLA and what the explanation is from the department as to what it actually means. And so we're just hoping to get some help to correct it. And that's where we are right now. This is a very tough task, as I started off by saying. And I know Kevin has paid attention to this as a industry participant for a long time, as a caregiver, as an activist, as an advocate, as somebody who works with the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association of the legislative committee. And I just know you want a couple minutes just to weigh in, because I know you know a lot about this, and hopefully I teed that up well enough. But anything you want to add in, please do.
Yeah, and Jamie, thanks for having me on. My journey in cannabis started well before there was a business aspect to this thing. And being a caregiver, being a patient, being a consumer, when we have gone through this entire process, my ultimate goal has always been to have inclusivity, to not have a monopolistic environment, and to protect people from going to jail over marijuana. I think it's a big hypocrisy that we allow other uses of other drugs and chemicals, but yet marijuana has been victimized for all these years. So my main goal when I got involved was to try to make sure that we ended the prohibition of marijuana. And, from the very jump street when we started working on the MMFLA, it was very apparent to me that that everything legislatively goes through the Michigan State Police. If they don't put their stamp on it, then it doesn't make its way through the process. And from day one, the biggest gripe by the state police was how are we going to keep our guys employed? If we're not enforcing marijuana things, how are we going to keep these guys going? And so their ultimate end negotiating tool was, okay, cool, we'll agree to pass your bill if you allow us to mouth swab people on the side of the road in this this pilot program, right? Well, we found out that that's just a farce. It didn't do anything. They continue to put funds towards it to try to secure their work, and here we are down the road, and we're running into the same issues again. Like you had mentioned, when they wanted to combine the bills originally, the biggest pitch was that we want to streamline things for you guys, so it doesn't take so long for you guys to get a fresh frozen request process. It doesn't take so long for you guys to get an application reviewed. It doesn't take so long for this and for that. And then at the very end, they don't even talk about it. But in the legislation, as Jamie and I, meticulously went through every single word in it, we found language that allowed for this open-ended budget to allow the state police to do enforcement. Now, we know that the big players, the MCMA guys, the people that have worked to do their best to try to monopolize this industry, see the caregivers as a huge threat and think that there is no difference between the illicit market and the caregivers. And so they've wanted to create some sort of enforcement on the caregivers to try to even further monopolize the industry. And that's where the state police open-ended budget comes in. And I am adamantly against that. I think that we are beyond that, and if we're eliminating the prohibition of cannabis, then we need to do that thoroughly. And we cannot go backwards and allow the state police to start going and kicking doors in at caregivers' places because of phone calls of a complainant or whatever it might be. But at the same time, as now I am a business owner, we are seeing a lot of product that is making it into the illicit market, and it's fluctuating the pricing on the regulated market. And so there needs to be something that is done. I mean, we've seen zero enforcement so far, for the most part. And when we've asked about enforcement, the response has been, well, we don't have the funding to do that. And, if we just combine these two bills, we could create the funding to do that. And I just refuse to take that approach. We fought against it very adamantly when they pitched that the first time. And like Jamie said, now here we are, 6 months down the road, and we've got the Native American bill to try to regulate the dispensaries and grows on the Indian reservations. And here in the very end, at the very last minute, we've slipped in this language to again give an open-ended budget to the state police to do enforcement. And I just can't sign on that. I think that if it ends up that they will not remove that language, then we have to fight this bill tooth and nail. But it's funny, when we talk about trust, the state police with their testing that we've seen on cannabis, and all the rulings that have had to be overturned because of their corrupt actions. They want us to just take their word for it. They want me to just trust that they're going to do the right thing. I can't do that. I'm beyond that. I've lost my trust for them. And until they demonstrate that they're willing to negotiate in good faith and do things the right way, I don't think that we can trust them. So I am adamantly at this point opposing this legislation until we get that language removed.
People may not realize that in order to accomplish what we just talked about, the funding of the Michigan State Police, that would require a vote, a supermajority vote in both the House and the Senate. And there are very few opportunities for those things to come by. We don't have very many bills that are proposing those changes. So whenever there's an opportunity to wedge something in, this is one of those few chances that the Michigan State Police has. Of course, it means we should be more diligent in the way that we watchdog these particular things. The bills we're talking about have already made it all the way through the House of Representatives and are now facing the Senate. And we just now have realized that there's this potential poison pill inside there. But it's not something that they could just do with a snap of the fingers. It's a very high standard of change that is sought in order to accomplish this. And this is one of those few chances for that. So our viewers may not be aware that this is a very difficult thing to do. It's not something that can just be done on a whim.
Well, it can be, there could be an amendment made in the committee and the Senate, but they have to want to do it and believe that it's a good idea and realize have all the support lined up. And we don't have that. We have people that either don't understand this or don't care about it. And this is being driven, by some tribes who'd like to see this change. One of which Bay Mills. And incidentally, I want to say that I got word that there was some confusion last week when we were talking about some of this, and somebody from Bay Mills thought that we were somehow saying that they were either somehow working in conjunction with Loom or something like that. And I know that we all know that's not the case. But we did talk about Loom not coming through in other situations on some of the tribal lands and their agreements and that kind of stuff. And that's been discussed quite a bit. And maybe there was some confusion with the stuff we were saying. But to be clear, what Bay Mills does, bringing in caregiver stuff, is something I really appreciate and like a lot. And I like the idea that these different models that are more broad and liberal in practice can then help have an influence ultimately maybe on our own states.
If we're given the wrong impression about what we're saying, though, we'll have to consciously take a step to make sure that we're being more clear, because the last thing we want to do is to give people the idea that we're advocating for something that we don't. So that's distressing for me to hear, but I'm glad that you shared it. Thank you, Jamie.
So if Bay Mills, and right now they don't really have a problem with this language, I like to believe with a little bit more context, maybe there's some cause there, but I do also believe it's kind of ultimately on the wrong side of history, and if we could just get some support to make this change, it could be kind of painless. It's not likely, and it's very difficult. What's difficult is not making the change; is lining up all the support so the change goes down with that simple process. And we'll have a couple of lawmakers suggesting that they do it. There'll be a lot of us advocacy groups and organizations and people, appealing to the senators to make this change and trying to explain the issue. We'll be on record and we'll do what we can do. Just difficult task. And,
the other thing is that although we prefer to just remove the language right from it, remember this is a bill that is about the relationship with the tribes and the state. A portion of this bill that's been introduced that would affect the entire industry goes beyond the initial scope of what they are trying to accomplish. It's odd from its inclusion, because it just seems like that's the only part of this entire bill that really affects the broad issue at hand. But the second thing that's been offered, other than just removing it completely, would be to add some guidelines, add some parameters that would still allow the expenditure of funds, but give it some kind of
narrow the scope significantly to what the department says they expect its function to be. And
let the language match up with the expectation that they're giving us. I mean, the expectation they have is we want people to be able to call the Michigan State Police when they have a problem. We want that too, right? We want Michigan State Police to be able to service the cannabis industry, but they currently already do. And I can't imagine a scenario where the Michigan State Police says, "Yeah, Kevin Pybus, I'm sorry, I'm not coming to your place because we didn't get paid." I just don't see that as a concept.
None of the excuses so far have made any sense. And in addition, they've admitted to actually using funds already.
Sure.
Paying for things, to the police for the MRTMA.
So the system works. The system currently works, right?
And they claim that they have an authority to do it. I don't believe that's necessarily true at all, but if that is true, then there's no reason to make this change. We need, additional authority for some reason. I don't believe so some of the explanations have been that this was just the LSB. The LSB just did this language themselves during this time.
They just threw it in there willy-nilly without request.
I don't believe that. They are a lot more thorough and careful in the LSB. They don't just make huge changes in law. That
would be against their nature. They never add things like that just because they want to. They've never done that before.
Yeah, I mean, guys, it has to be detailed in there. If they're going to get funding, we have the scope of their work has to be 100% detailed. Because if not, one, I'm concerned about the caregivers, them trying to use that money to go out and target caregivers for whatever reason. Secondarily, I am now a business owner, and my regulatory fees are based on the expenses of the agency. And so now I can see it already. I know how this is going to happen. The first week, they're going to start buying tanks and command centers and all this stuff. And next thing you know, we're going to have, $10 million in expenditures that guess who gets to pay the fee? The
And
licensees.
that's not just a guess either, because we've seen
No.
exactly real world examples of this. When we allocate money, the $3 million that we have every year that can come out of the medical marijuana fund to local police agencies for the enforcement of or education on the Medical Marijuana Act, we've seen them do things like buy heavy equipment, tanks, whatever stuff that doesn't relate to that. And then also, if you look at the military procurement program, which the Thetford Township issue was really, really bad about that. That allows local sheriffs to obtain military equipment, or at least it did at one point. And some of them went hog wild, ordering, MRAPs and things like that. Vehicles you can't even legally drive on the streets just to have one, even though Michigan State Police 5 miles down the road has exactly the same equipment. So this isn't just a guess. This is actual behavior by the Michigan State Police and by local sheriff agencies that causes concern about just giving them a blank check.
Well, and we've seen, I'm sorry, Anton, real quick. We've seen the actions of people like Don Bailey, these rogue agents that they don't keep in check, and they don't make sure that they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. Again, it falls back on trust. Every corner they've tried to do something sneaky with this legislation at every corner, and until they prove that they're trying to do things honestly, I can't support that. It's just, I can't. Sorry, Anton, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so we know that they've been operating under an MOU since 2019. When I say
Memorandum of Understanding. Yep.
Yeah. So CRA and MSP have been operating under this Memorandum of Understanding, right? And now, while we don't have copies of those MOUs, it supposedly spells out exactly what can be expended. And those expenditures, this is my understanding, is that in order for them to disperse those funds, this is already authorized by first the legislator and then signed off by the governor. So I guess my question is, what would it appears there? There seems to be very little appetite to remove the language. However, what, in your opinion, Kevin, would be an appropriate clarification, I guess, of that language? Because they're going to have something in there. Like what can they put in there that would satisfy you?
To me, if the language has to specifically exclude using funds to do any kind of enforcement on caregiving.
Be restricted to the commercial regulatory enforcement.
Yes, and to assist the CRA in their enforcement. And so what I mean by that is that if the CRA goes into a facility and they see a legal product, that the CRA can stay on site until the state police arrive, they can confiscate the product, and we can move forward the investigation. But anything further than that, and I don't have the language, Anton, to be honest with you, that I've prepared to submit in place of what they've got. But anything beyond that, to me, it shouldn't be allowed.
The easiest solution on this is just to allow the MSP to respond to requests for action from the CRA. Anything the CRA wants the MSP to do, I'm okay with that. But if the MSP proactively gets to just bill for hours, they would, spend an extra 300 hours a month just trolling tribal lands just so they could get an additional budget boost. Everything's based on finance, and I don't trust anybody that has a blank check. But if we were to put a restriction in there that says that the MSP can be compensated for any action requested by the CRA, to me, that solves the problem, because we still want to have coverage for the people that need coverage, but we also don't want to give the MSP the feeling that they can do whatever they want. So that would be my suggestion.
That's why I clarify a few things too. As far as I know, there is no legislative authority to, as there is with the MMFLA, unless this were to pass, to do the type of funding for police that has been going on. Because I believe they just kind of emulated what they were already doing with the MMFLA and just took it upon themselves to think it was okay to apply that to the MRTMA. So I don't believe that there's any real, authority to do that. But regardless, the method that they use to have an agreement isn't directed by anything or mandated by anything. This is just a working system that they chose to engage in, and those conditions and that agreement can be changed without the 3/4 supermajority vote that it takes to change the act. And if that language remains broad, if they choose to keep using that memorandum of understanding as the basis of agreement, all that has to do is be changed, and that can be changed to anything, anytime. The people that just raided Tui's place could submit an invoice based on this broad language and get reimbursed for it, because they actually said that they believe he was in violation of the MRTMA, which means they're trying to enforce shit from the MRTMA, which means this language would cover that as something for reimbursement.
Which Jamie is a crock of shit too, if excuse my language. But you know, the CRA investigated Tui because he was running an unlicensed dispensary. Listen, that's not in their scope. Their scope is to take care of the licensed market, not the unlicensed people. Like that's just a whole nother thing. So like you said, the scope has to be dialed in. You can't be using it to the CRA shouldn't be expending our money to be investigating unlicensed facilities. They're not licensed. You're talking about a regulated market.
I wonder if the tribal land should feel comfortable that the state police aren't necessarily ultimately interested in enforcing portions of whatever, activity is connected to the.
Well, how's that going to work, Jamie? The state police can't go on to tribal lands and start doing.
Well,
stuff.
I mean, with this language,
with this language, they would have the understanding.
They might have something to challenge. They might,
Yep. They're allowed to travel from non-native lands to a facility that's regulated by the CRA, right? I mean, they've got right of passage there, so. They would be able to justify going anywhere they want, essentially, as they're traveling from point A to point B.
I wouldn't put them past them being emboldened by it, whether they ultimately could do it or not.
Yes. I will say that Mike Woody just posted a question in regards to Halloween evening, October 31st, Monday. There is a party at Cannabis Council on Jefferson Avenue in Detroit. It's a costume party, and we would hope everyone would love to attend because they're always fun. It's a great time.
It is Monday night starting 5 or 6 or something like that, but it'll go on pretty late, I'm sure.
Yeah, as soon as it gets dark.
I know Kevin's got a split. He's got to get back to work. So thanks a lot for joining us. I know that you have an interest in this issue. I'm glad that you were able to come on and share your thoughts and just anything else you want to let us know before you have to split.
No, I've been waiting and holding my breath to be on the show for a long time, and I appreciate you, Jamie. You finally giving me the little tiny little window to be on for just a little minute. But
guilt, you're so good at it, guilt. Oh.
You know what? But no, seriously, Jamie, I appreciate you calling me about this issue and respecting my expertise in this area. I respect all you guys, and I think you guys do a great job day in, day out. And if it's not for voices like us standing up and spending the time to look through these things, these things would just get passed through and it'd be a worse market than it is today. So thanks, guys, for all that you do. Keep up the good work. And hopefully we can try to get some of this removed and at least get it, curbed a little bit so that it does what it's supposed to do. But thanks again, guys, for having me on, and I'll catch up with all you guys later.
Yeah, we're definitely going to try. We'll see what happens. But thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
peace,
really
brother. Have a good one.
You guys take care.
You too.
Bye.
There's so much going on right now as far as cannabis goes. Jamie last week brought up a very important point about the supposed cannabis death that happened in Massachusetts at the True Leaf facility. I looked into it a little bit further after Jamie mentioned something, and it is true that OSHA, who originally had said that this poor woman, I believe 27 years old, died as a result of inhaling cannabis dust from the production facility that she worked at True Leaf. Now, True Leaf's public statements have led everyone to believe that may not necessarily be true. OSHA has modified their original report to now remove the cause of death that was originally stated, and it says something like cause pending. So at this particular point, it looks as if the reporting on that one was a little excitable and off correct. So. And OSHA, of course, should be ashamed of themselves for putting something like that out there and not actually having done the complete research. If they've now changed their mind about what they did, And I'm
sure what that's based on. It might have been on further investigation into pre-existing conditions of the person. Maybe I really don't know what that was based on, but their concept of there being low air quality, a lot of particulate in the air, whether it be cannabis or anything else. Is not really good for, people with respiratory issues, regardless of what the thing is that's clogging up the system. So,
well, and there was some question. I read several articles, and there was some question about how long that particular day she had been wearing a mask and whether that mask was the N95. style mask that's preferred in order to block the most of these particulate matters, and exactly where she was working during what part of the day as well. So there's a lot of things up in the air, but that's one of the reasons why mainstream media oftentimes just goes for the most excitable headline. If it bleeds, it leads, and that's just a danger of our current system. We gravitate directly towards the excitable items as opposed to reporting something accurately that might not necessarily get as many likes or views or shares.
You wonder how often the cause of death is changed in that type of scenario, because I mean that would have taken something from OSHA for OSHA to modify that. The coroner did I read, Rick, am I on point saying that I believe it was the medical examiner that actually went back and also modified the cause of death to
I think that's
pending.
true.
So I mean, in order for them to, I mean, it's just, I wonder, that can't happen very often, I would imagine.
I can imagine. Again, there's two different things. There's a cause of death, and then there's the symptom that assisted the cause of death. And if the cause of death is respiratory failure, well, that's something relatively easy to prove. But they're directly saying that the cause of death was the inhalation of this particular particulate matter. So that's like a conclusion being treated as the scientific reason instead of the scientific reason being the actual thing that you put on the death certificate. So it always seemed odd to me, because inhalation of particulate matter is not a typical cause of death. It would be respiratory failure is what they would list. So all of this has been weird. But again, what it's a real reminder of is that we still have a lot of work to do on some people that still think it's 1950s when it comes to cannabis out there. They're so eager to show cannabis is bad that they will feature any kind of a headline. The University of Michigan does a lot of studies regarding cannabis, not necessarily working with cannabis itself, but they do reviews of literature, or they'll do polling, or they'll do type of observational studies and things like that. And oftentimes the headlines of their studies are the most misleading things. They have 95 conclusions, but the only one that they want to focus on is the one that makes cannabis look negative. And it's still very much a problem, even in a state like Michigan.
There's a lot of, they just, I read a news article, was it yesterday, that folks who have surgery, who are cannabis users or who use cannabis prior to surgery, go through more pain post-surgery. And that was the latest study that I read about yesterday. And, you got to wonder,
how do they measure that?
I don't know, but there is a lot of, there was the thing, Jamie, we were talking about regarding was it 4-year-old kid who ingested the Delta 8 gummies, had a seizure and died. What state was that? In Massachusetts? Was it Massachusetts?
They're charging the mom with murder.
Murder, yeah. She was indicted by a grand jury for murder and I believe child negligence. And what they're saying is that the mother actually called poison control. They said that the mother reported she called poison control and said that the child ingested half of a CBD gummy, and poison control essentially said kid should be fine. Mother let it go, and within a period of time, the kid, it looks like, had a seizure. Kid has a seizure, and when they come and investigate, they find an empty bottle of Delta 8 THC gummies, and that is what they're using as the basis for the cause. And again, I don't know Delta 8. I just have no idea. There's no research on.
I don't know how you can predict how that's going to react in a child's body.
How do we know? I mean, we're just figuring out Delta 9. Delta 8 is and it's not a natural. It's not a naturally occurring process where this is. Was it some sort of contaminant in the gummy itself? Was it just a fact that if you just bombard a child's brain with a massive dose of Delta 8, it can cause a seizure? I don't know. I don't know who. I don't think anybody knows, right?
What is there a connection at all?
Yeah,
there's no reason to believe there's a connection at all.
Could be nothing at all. It could have been a seizure that was triggered by some other defect that child had, and just because he had Delta 8 in his system, it may not have even contributed to that. But the fact of what Anton's saying is correct. I mean, at this point, they're just shooting blanks, man. They're shooting darts in the dark.
But they got an indictment. I mean, they took that to a great. See, when you read, you're right. The sensationalist headlines. But when you go back and you read this particular case, I mean, this went from an investigation to a prosecutor to a grand jury, from the medical examiner's opinion that went through the grand jury, and they got an indictment on this one. So
Yeah,
I'm
all
curious.
without any real
That's a
science.
lot of people that had to believe
Yeah.
it to be true,
If
man.
if
Right?
you say it caused the death, that's fine, right? Okay, but what is this? The science? We don't have any. What is there? Is there evidence that Delta 8 can trigger a seizure? I don't know. I have no idea. But we just, there's a lot of these things popping up that we just don't have information on.
I think in the past too, that sometimes issues like this
No,
would pop
again,
up and they would just be locally important and no one would ever find out about it. But nowadays, our news cycle is so hooked up on a global basis. Every single instance like this, we all learn about. You know, it's immediate, and that gives a false impression about how frequently these things happen. You know, you get one in Oklahoma, you get one in Alaska, you get one in Florida. Those are 3 isolated incidents, but people might assume that it's a nationwide problem as opposed to just 3 isolated incidents.
And again, when we say stuff like, does it do this? Does it do that? Okay, that is very clearly saying we have no idea if it had anything to do with anything. We know that it was there. We know that the kid died. That medical examiner and the grand jury and everybody down the line have made the assumption
Correlation's not causation.
that there's more of a connection there than we know there to be. And that, you know, that's a problem with cannabis at large.
Yeah. And like I said, people still assuming it's 1950s out there and willing to believe the worst things about the cannabis plant, regardless of all of the other evidence to the contrary.
You know, and my thing is, if it's possible, right? We know, like, and I think I put this in my post on the Cannabis Professionals page, like, we know THC can elevate blood pressure, it can elevate heart rate. That's just the physiological change of consuming cannabis. And people could have, if you have somebody who has some sort of either undiagnosed medical condition or whatever, can have adverse effects, right? But none of that should be used to promote prohibition or the reason for prohibition. Because here's the thing: is children ingest things all the time and it kills them, right? And as sad as that is, that, you know, to hone in on cannabis, if it did, we need the research to show, or we need a reason.
Kids come across a gun and shoot themselves in the head all the time.
Number one cause of child death, it seems nowadays, is gunfire.
So, you know, I am a proponent of knowing why. Give me the information. If it can cause a heart attack in some people, cool, let me know. That isn't a reason why I'm going to stop, and it isn't a reason that prohibition should be promoted. But give us the facts and give it to us in an unbiased manner, right? Because, you know, I mean, just saying that this is a reason why you shouldn't be using cannabis because the kids are going to get it, they're going to go psychotic.
Just remind me of
like
another
pregnancy warning labels that we have on our cannabis products here in Michigan, which actually don't say this will harm you. It says it might, it may. That's just fear mongering. Then, if it's not a definitive,
it makes somebody, it shames somebody from thinking about using cannabis. You know,
yes, it does.
It does. I mean, as far as the interactions.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
No, there was another bullshit report that came out of and there's been other ones too. I think it was out of San Diego. They're reporting that they're seeing 37 cases of cannabis psychosis a day at the ER with kids or something like that.
The newest diagnosis fad. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, somebody goes in, if cannabis is a part of the story, you immediately see it repackaged or assumed to be a lot more, you know, consequential in the whole scheme of things than it is known to be. And then those symptoms, if somebody did use some cannabis and they have that little anxiety or memory loss, you know, short-term memory loss, or, you know, a couple of that little palpitation, whatever the things that a lot of us are very familiar with. That happens to me. I completely know what's going on. I'll wait it out, you know, just like the stuff was premature. So it's kind of hit me like this or whatever, you know. But some people who don't know that, you know, might freak out and think there's more of a serious thing going on. They go and it gets recorded. Sometimes it was just like, yeah, I had some cannabis this week, you know, and whatever's going on just gets, you know, it gets part of the report. Now there's those connections being
cannabis addiction syndrome.
Yeah, you know, so you know, it's all, you know, there's a lot of misunderstanding. We don't actually think in terms of science. Even scientists quite often put out stupid information that they probably should know better. Yeah. That before they have something substantiated, they leap to conclusions when it comes to cannabis.
I think it's bad to allow the psychiatric industry to define the things that they make money with. So if there's a clinical diagnosis of something that happens in a practitioner setting, right? Well, then that seems to be pretty legit because you don't have any money motive. But when a psychiatrist says, I'm going to enroll you in my my class because I'm going to charge back the government X amount of dollars for this. And by the way, in order for you to be in this class, you have to have this cannabis addiction syndrome, whatever they call it. That's how a lot of those things get formed. Court dictated actions or psychiatrists who are creating these diagnoses for financial profit.
And we brought that up in a real life scenario with good friend Amy Carter. She's ran for public office. She has a pediatric son who uses cannabis that really helps him out, changed his life, changed her life as a result. She's with us as secretary on the board of the Cannabis Caucus, just, weed stirs, works with Trish. I forgot what my point was.
That she has a story about
of course,
being
so
confronted with this fake syndrome.
She had a long-term, person that they worked with, a professional psychiatrist, and was very aware of the positive gains and stuff. That person left for one reason or another. New person comes in, hears the story of all the great response and how it changed their lives and stuff, and chalks it up to, the abuse or whatever, the THC abuse syndrome or whatever the hell that
he believes she's giving him high dose THC and he believes that's abuse.
A non-scientific thing. There's such a thing. You can have a lot of THC, but we also saturate. We also get saturated and you don't bring any more in after a while. So it's not like you upload on it as if it's some kind of a poison. And the more you have, the more you run a risk of something happening, or it doesn't go through the same pathways as that. We think about it as something that it just simply, isn't. I'm not sure if I got this one up here.
Yeah, you really have to look at the history of the particular individual.
Occupational asthma for breathing particulate in the new industry. So you have to have rooms that have really good ventilation and that type of stuff. So,
well, I mean, occupational asthma sounds like it is a legitimate potential in some of the manufacturing circumstance that we have within our industry.
I think if you have low air quality, not a lot of ventilation and shit that's not air in the air and you're breathing it, this can't be good. Hey, we are joined by Joe and Mark, and they're not there, but we'll take a look at their background for a second.
Nice closet, Joe, Mark. Yes.
There you go.
We'll walk away.
Very
I'm
neat.
not the professional get in front of you.
No. You're the professional. You know it. How you guys doing?
We're great. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, we're doing well. We're on a countdown here.
Yeah.
So, hey, man, you guys can introduce yourselves just a little bit more, if you don't mind, so you can say what you want to say about your position, but I certainly know you guys was working on a local ballot initiative that we're going to talk about a little bit. Colin, Rick, and I went up and had some discussions with some of the locals with you guys.
Sure. Yep.
But please introduce yourself a little bit more. Let us know about that, but there's a lot of them going on in the state, this November, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But,
no doubt. Yeah. My name is Joe Martush. My background is I'm in the manufacturing industry, commercial woodworking. Got into the grow business here in Colin, partnered up with 5 other investors. And it's been a struggle getting it from trying to get recreational. So here we are. And then in addition, I have Mark Mannion with me. Go ahead, Mark, jump in there.
I'm Mark Marion. I've been on the construction side for the last 42 years. Never been into the cannabis stuff and jumped into it about 4 years ago. And I'm not sure if it's been a good thing, but it's been interesting, that's for sure. And the biggest push that people don't understand right now is it's here in Colin. It's here. I can call a phone call and they deliver it in Colin. But the people that don't understand it saying that rec we don't want. Well, medical's here. We have 3 dispensaries. It's here.
And this ballot to opt in for retail retail and cultivation?
Yes. We're going to have
Yeah.
What we did, or Joe did, is we backed out a lot of the stuff that they had. They had like 74 licenses. Well, the township's only 8 miles long, 2.5 miles wide. They approved 11 dispensaries. It's set up for failure. So what we did is we backed down to say, I believe it was maximum 5.
Correct.
And we went down to 43 licenses, according with stack licensing 2 for the Class C growers. And I think it's a way to go. If the township can decide if they want 2 dispensaries to 5 dispensaries, or they can decide, we want 20 Class C growers, 2 Class B, 1 Class A. They have all the options. I don't think the township people, the residents, actually understand it. They don't have enough experience in it, and they just call us a bunch of potheads.
So you alluded to something, Mark, and I agree. You're right. From my experience in front of a sampling of the residents there, they kind of were confusing this issue with whether or not there's even going to be activity around. And we said you can go to the town next door. And there was the supervisor from Bangor there discussing how it's worked out well, in their town right next door. You can have it delivered from the town next door, right, right to your door. Aside from that, there's people growing for themselves and for patients, and under the MRTMA or the MMA. And it's not the make it or break it thing. It's just to make it easier for residents, to offer some more opportunity. The positives that we tried to get across,
and the positives that we did get across, to be perfectly frank, I don't think they actually understood it, because they think on our side that we just want to do it to make a lot of money. And what we position ourselves to is it benefits the city. You opted into medical. You're only getting $5,000 for a tag. You've seen what Glenn Rollins said, $980,000 they brought in. $676,000 was just on permits.
So just medical, you get the local application fee, but with rec and retail stores or micro businesses, you share in the tax revenue. And he's talking about the money that towns around them are getting for sharing in the tax revenue. And what
about $50,000 each per year.
Right. What Colin has so far decided to forego. So
yeah,
right.
and as we started out at the very beginning, 2.5 years ago, when I started building the building, they were getting $5,000 for the license, and it's actually you don't call it really a license; it's a
Permit.
It's a permit to be able to grow here. So when we did do that, they were up around the $200,000 mark.
Mm-hmm.
We're back down right now because everybody's backing out of the city because of the medical. We can't sell our product. We have to send it to a recreational place like in Bangor. They flip our product. Then we sell it from there because no one wants the medical. So as of setting right now, we're down to about, I think, $35,000.
55,000 as of June. So at the peak, the township was taking in probably about 3 years ago, $190,000 in permits fees. And since they weren't going recreational, companies have left. And as of June of this year, they were at $55,000 in permit fees. So they've left a lot of money on the table and walked away from it.
Almost 75% reduction is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing with that math. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right now, though, since June, now to this point, we have 3 other people that's left.
Yeah.
So now we're down to about $30,000. That's it.
You think about the tax base that they're losing and, the plans that companies had here to do build outs. And it's a shame. I mean, the dollar amount is staggering that the community is losing. And so through our campaign process, we're educating them, letting them know, mailers, we had the town hall meeting, we got a Facebook page, and I think we're making some headway. It's a very stubborn community in that there's probably 20% of the population that is, they're adamantly against it.
There's no changing some people's minds.
No, and we're not, and we get that. There's 20% that can't have enough of it. And there's that 60% in between that really don't care either way. But it's a means of educating them and getting them to vote. And that's really what we've been focusing on.
I mean, some of those, if you remember, we've made light of it a couple times on this show. We started off by essentially getting damned to hell for for wine and stuff. So there's some people that have this. There's the generational thing, just bad information about cannabis over generations, and that's immoral. And I can't believe you would even think of this, and the children, and all this kind of stuff. It was.
And Jamie, the odd part about that, the gentleman you're talking about, he has quite a tattered past himself with violence and guns. I didn't know it at the time, talking with people. And then some of the other people that spoke, it's funny. They're hypocrites in that you go to their individual Facebook pages, and almost every picture is them at a bar or alcohol, or and it's like, come on.
So you've engaged in a lot of promotion in advance of the November 8th election. You also sent out a flyer to your constituents, wasn't that right?
Prior to the town hall meeting, or
I mean, anytime. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we've been sending out numerous flyers. We're targeting certain age groups, with certain messages. We had a really nice flyer go out last week. We had a gentleman, his name is Roy DeLorge. He's 85 years old. And for years and years, he was our township supervisor out here. And just a sharp, very likable man. He supports us. And he gave us a quote in addition to his photograph. And then we got quotes from other people with a variety of ages that support us. So hopefully that was a powerful piece, and, that was well received.
All right.
And Jamie, and sorry to cut you off, but you hit it a little earlier. Education. No one wants to get educated on the product itself. So I believe, and I'm not saying this as a township, the township and all of us have learning curves. The township didn't want to look into the learning curves, so they just stepped aside. And they didn't want to tell people what this was or what this is, how much we can do, because basically the supervisor didn't understand it either. And now as they're getting educated, it's going a little bit better. But the township board members, the 5, are fighting against themselves so much in totally different other aspects than the weed. That's what's creating a lot of the problem. And they don't want to give that education out, or the right responses to say, hey, we can make money. We can use this money.
Sadly, we're caught in the crossfire and other political or other sticking points in the community amongst the board members. And then we seem to get dragged into it, one way or the other for, I don't know why, but we do. And it's been a uphill battle, but, we're positive, we're being patient, and we feel good about it.
If you've gotten I know there's no formal polling, and that kind of stuff that has gone on, but I mean, just you feel good about it. Have you gotten some kind of feedback from people?
Yeah, we are. Without polling, it's tough to tell. But just circulating around the community and talking with people, I've heard quite a bit. We didn't support it the first time around, but I think we're going to support it this time. Or my wife doesn't agree with it, but I think she's going to vote yes, just because she's beginning to understand it. And so, I think as a whole, it's being more accepted. However, with that being said, man, we can't take the gas off the pedal here. I mean, we've got less than 2 weeks, and we've got to hit it hard.
One of the funny things that was said, you guys, in our meeting when everybody was there, how the one lady said that, secondhand smoke for the kids, and it makes their mind mush. Well, here's the thing. When I grew up, that wasn't around, but my dad had liquor in the house. We knew better to go not to that liquor. That's a parenting thing. So if you can't teach your kids, if they're 10 years old, 5 years, that, hey, this is an adult thing, you don't do that. That's parenting in the real world.
There was a lot of there was the person that said, oh, you can't eat it. It's actually a superfood. It has a natural balance of proteins and carbohydrates and micronutrients.
They were saying that to argue against the use of land acreage to grow cannabis on, saying that it should be better spent growing something that we could actually consume. Although I think that's kind of the point of the cannabis anyway.
Hemp can be grown on that land right now without any of their input, so
Absolutely.
they could have the same, issues
They,
without.
they do. And another thing on our side, when they said, if you recall, the one lady that was saying, all you want to do is take our land. If you recall what I said, we don't want your land. The farmers built this community. Definitely they did. We're a farmer. We're just inside. They voted outside grow out in this township. And the way to have the best product is inside grows. And that's what everybody's done here. And we're all trying diligently to create the best stuff that we have. We are not big pharma here. We're all small mom and pop shops that are trying to, instead of getting a lot of quantity out, we want quality. And we struggle. I mean, there's two different testing abilities, or testing too. So on the medical side, we're only allowed 10,000 CFUs, and the rec side is allowed 100,000 CFU. Well, you can go back to all the states that started out way before us. They're adjusting all that right now. They went to one single license. They're pushing to get one single license down, and they're going to 50,000 CFUs now because they know, they've learned that the medical, what are we, Joe, about 16% of the marketplace? We're under 16%.
I think it's dropping less than that now.
Shrinking by 10% each month.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a huge thing. Even though maybe, let's say it went to 50,000 CFU, it's still a safe product. That lady argued with me with that the studies, when I said Harvard, I was there at Harvard. I never went to school, just a dumb carpenter, but met with them people. Marijuana is one of the largest studied product since it's been looked at. We looked at it when California jumped in it, and I can't remember the provision, but they're all doctors. They have stopped convulsions with kids. I mean, it was a big article 3 years ago. They were showing that on the TV. The mother actually got arrested because she gave her 10-year-old daughter, but it was under a supervision of a guy that knew how to do it. And she cut down her convulsions. They had 10 of them a day. She does one a day. She's down to one a month now. Why can't you give that help to somebody?
It's
Again,
stupid that it takes so long to get there. Yeah. That's for sure. But
we're speaking on an intellectual level, and people are working on an emotional level. So oftentimes, when we're talking about the benefits that it brings to community, they're different wavelengths.
Generations of internalizing bad information. It's very hard to unpeel that. And that's
you can't logic away hate. Right. So when they hate something as hard as they hate on cannabis, no matter what reasonable arguments we make, we're not going to be able to dent that particular core belief that they have. Oftentimes people like that have to have a personal experience with cannabis. They have to see it with their own eyes, or their relative has to experience something exactly in order for them to start to change that paradigm. And certainly when we suggest that they're wrong about it, they bristle up like a porcupine. They're even less likely to change at that point than ever, because now they feel attacked.
We could have made them try to substantiate the baseless claim that they were giving out. We could have challenged it, all that kind of stuff. But obviously, none of that would have done any good. It would have taken time. It just would have been friction. It's
a confrontational action as opposed to just an abiding tone. Abide everyone's argument, because everyone's entitled to their own arguments, right? Yeah. When we challenge what they say, it's an aggressive action that really disrespects the people that are there to participate in government.
Wouldn't have moved anybody's consciousness at all. Anyway.
No, you weren't changing anything there. It doesn't matter what you said or what you presented. And that's the big problem with society today. You have one side and you have another side, and There's no having meeting in the middle and having a constructive conversation.
Absolutism, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's why you just have to abide everyone. Let them all speak their mind. There's absolutely nothing to be lost by allowing everyone to have free speech. For crying out loud.
Some of those people, kind of expose them their ignorance to those who
Totally.
are a little bit more aware.
Sometimes, sometimes you are your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. And we've been here. Some of us, Mark has been here operating 3 years.
Going on 3 years.
Our operation is, well over a year now, and we're so discreet, and people don't even know where we're at.
Right.
And that's the part that is really discouraging is, we do everything that we're supposed to do. And, but yet you get, you get all the dirty looks and whatnot and the comments. It's a shame. It really is what has happened, up here.
So on November 8th, you're going to have a command center set up. You guys going to have, close-knit friends.
You got to stay 100 feet away from the polling booth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's up for discussion. One of the issues that we have to, and right now we're in this educating process where the proposal is located on the ballot. It's on the backside. It's the very last proposal because it's the only local township proposal on the ballot. So with the pecking order, that's just where we end up. We're in the upper right-hand corner, which is good. We've been fortunate that we know where the proposal is located, and we're sending out flyers saying it's right here. A lot of voters, you want to
forget to flip your ballot. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, you got to flip it over, and this is where we're at. So we're in that education process.
By the judges.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, we've talked several times about using flyers and other ways to get the message out there. The town hall that we did was, of course, a pretty cool thing as well. But how many flyers do you have to send out in order to blanket Cawcaulin?
Well, there's 3,700 plus registered voters. More often than not, what we do is we send one per household. In the last few that we've been doing, I'm targeting age groups, just a different message. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we're only sending out 900 at a time.
But 900 very valuable recipients, though, right?
100%, and they're based on what the message is. We have all the information on ages, some of the demographics. So we kind of, needle it down to that as best as we can. We're very fortunate. We got a nice campaign manager, Virgil Smith. He's out of Detroit, and he has helped us out immensely. We're very fortunate.
Former state senator.
Correct. That is correct. Yes. Easy to work with and very matter of fact, and
understands these processes very well.
Indeed. Yeah. We're very fortunate.
Right. So we talked about Cawcaulin quite a bit, and there may be some people viewing from other states that are not familiar with the geography here in Michigan or where things are at. Cawcaulin is essentially a Lake Huron shoreline community that's located just north of Bay City and south of Tawas. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say. Correct. Yes.
Even south of Pinconning, or
it is just Pinconning's maybe 15 miles to our north. Thereabouts.
Which is one of the first places that really took off and just said, correct, every little bit of space that you can cram one of these things in, it's open.
Yeah. It's a highly traveled community. We have M13 that runs through it. And sometimes people, more often than not, people will jump on 13, which is also US 23, to get off of I-75. Yeah. And so it's a drive-through community.
It's one of those classic drives in Michigan when you want to drive up north.
Turkey roost and all that kind of stuff.
23 all the way up to the coastline is just one of the.
It is. It 100% is that, and it's interesting. My manufacturing facility sits right on 13, so I can watch as the weekend approaches. The traffic really picks up.
Have y'all thought about? Okay, let's say it does pass. What about the aftermath? Because then they're going to try and play zoning games and all the other games that go with all of that.
Maybe, but they did intimate that if it passes, we'll go along with it. Like these are local leaders
implemented fairly, I think,
out of the way instead of like really being opposition. So hopefully that continues. But
that's a really good question. Mark and I were at our last board meeting, and two of the trustees kind of said, you know what, we need to be ready for this because, you know, the growers are ready to go, or the operators are ready to go, and we need to, you know, accommodate that. So that was encouraging. I think that they're acknowledging, and I think that they're getting some feedback that, hey, this very well could pass. This is not 2 years ago. And so I think that the way that the proposal is written, you know, they have to move it along, and, you know, there's really not going to be a delay game, so to speak.
Yeah, that was pretty swift. I did enjoy that language a little bit. I was wondering, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Greg Schmid was involved in helping with the language.
Fantastic attorney, man.
Long-time contributor to cannabis rights, activism,
yes,
and advocacy and legal analysis for, you know, many
attorney
years.
for the Bay City area. Yes.
And he's you know, he's located so close to us in Saginaw. We're very fortunate.
And are there any other, I mean, we know there's, I believe, 32 different local ballot initiatives going on around the state. Any more right around you that you're familiar with?
No, I am not. I live in Saginaw County, so I'm just focusing on Cawcon and this proposal, and I'm totally engrossed in it right now.
And most of the areas around there have kind of opted in one way or another. Really,
they have, yeah.
I think here in Michigan, the default is yes on most of these things.
I would hope so. Agreed. You know, and I think historically, on a race like this for the governor, I think the turnout 60%, generally speaking, somewhere in there. You know, and there are a lot of big proposals on there. Hopefully, it will draw more people to vote.
A lot of people are fired up about different things.
Yeah,
you know, obviously, we have a political divide. Seems like the cannabis issue, though, is something that you know, regardless of what end of the political spectrum you're on, we can come together and find a lot of common ground there. So just turnout, I think, is good for that issue.
Yeah, and the real thing is, this is a business. You know, people call us potheads.
Yeah.
Well, we're not a pothead. The way I look at it, I'm 63 years old. I mean, I did that stuff when I was young. Don't get me wrong. I tried it and stuff. It wasn't my forte. You know, as I got older, this is only probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a friend of mine tell me that, you know, if you want some good sleep, hit this pen. You know, he made me a vape pen up. I was on high blood pressure medicine at that time. I started doing a couple hits at night for sleep. I would sleep 2 or 3 hours. I sleep 6 hours now. And I don't take no more. I don't take no more high blood pressure medicine either. So it helped me out. It was very beneficial. I wanted to get some sleep. I got the bonus round. So it's been 5 years. I've never really taken any drugs in my life. But when I had to take that high blood pressure medicine, then it's going to wreck your liver. It's going to wreck this. You know, everything you see on a commercial. Take this, but your heart's going down, your liver's going down, everything's.
Bunch of other medications for all the side effects come up. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
What medication, if you smoke a bowl, smoke a joint, hit a pen, they have never had someone die from marijuana, period.
And it took the place of some of those other pharmaceutical approaches, or allowed people to take less of it.
Yes.
Sometimes. Yep.
And a lot of the things is too, it was in our open hall meeting when the one lady started griping about and I can't pronounce the word properly, the opioids.
Opioids, yeah.
That's what all them places are giving marijuana to get them off of that.
Yeah. Harm reduction. Yeah.
Yeah. It's on the news every single night. Pay attention to the news. It's helping people.
Yeah. Anton knows for sure that source.
Yes, absolutely. For me, the VA had me on all kinds of opioids.
And Anton represents a lot of veterans' interests.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
your
So
perspective.
I kind of represent the disabled vet community, and that the amount of medications I was able to get off. I mean, it's probably close to 20 by now.
Really?
Just yeah. Over the years, yeah. I mean, I've had bags. I get bags, garbage bags of medications, and cannabis was able to not only help get off of some of the worst ones, but also like stem the side effects that I was feeling from some of the others that I had to stay with. Right. So yeah, for me, it's been a lifesaver. And I mean, I talk
That's
to
awesome.
veterans all
Yeah.
day long. I mean, I can't be without it personally. And I'm a cancer survivor as well too. So I just I don't know. I like cannabinoids in my body, right? It makes me feel better, right? So hopefully no cancer's growing. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But it gives me some comfort. And after everything we've been through and my community's been through, you still go to the VA and you're shamed for it, right? And I live in Macomb Township, which is another complete pain in the ass community to deal with when it comes to cannabis. They're actually they're probably one of the worst in the states. And, we have a population, I believe 226 of us who are actually permanently and totally disabled through the Veterans Administration. Right. And yet they bust balls. They bust balls all the time. And to the point where, it's a hindrance. And as a taxpayer, as a voter, as somebody who actually, defended this place, I just want to be left alone. Right. I want access to it. I want access to people who know about it. And I just don't want my balls busted. And I don't think you all want your balls busted either. And when we get into other arguments of either people bring other issues, religion into it or whatever, and those beliefs are fine to have, but they really have no place in an uninformed way to approach this decision when we're talking about.
They shouldn't be imposing their, other beliefs onto somebody else.
Because your religious beliefs or whatever may not be mine. And as a community, we have to respect everybody's beliefs. And just as I have to respect your belief of religion, you should respect my belief that I need access to this medicine, right? And there's no data to show that we're the cartel has moved in next. It's just bullshit, right?
No,
it's bullshit. So
people are desperate when they start throwing the cartel argument in there.
And by the way, just for everybody knows, there's a free virtual girls chat if you go to that thing right there. So I'm sure we're not being infiltrated by spam right now.
Oh no! Well, we really made it. Now the Chinese are paying attention to us.
All right.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing up here too, and again, it's maybe 20% of the population. A lot of individuals, a lot of people don't realize how mainstream cannabis really is, in that it's so common, and that professionals are using it daily in lieu of having a drink,
winning several gold medals and high level performance or whatever.
The Major League Baseball just adopting Charlotte's Web as the official CBD of MLB. Come on, that's huge. And I don't like Charlotte's Web, but it's huge.
Yeah, continue, Joe.
Go ahead. I was going to say, look. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, we cut you off.
Oh no! The fact that it's mainstream and they're oblivious to it. Quite frankly.
Right on. Go ahead, Anton. Sorry about that.
I was going to say, I tell people, look, I was a federal agent and I was using it. And, I worked for the feds for years. And it was because of my injuries that I had gotten from the military. And then my injuries that I got on the job that left me, I ditched the medicine and went to cannabis. And, I kind of use that. Some people, see that as is a black mark. But for me, with the security clearance issues, like, look, I tell these people trusted me with all the goodies, right? All the national security goodies. And I was using the stuff. And I say that now because there ain't shit they can do to me about it. So, and I'm fine, right? I never gave away the goodies. I never, it's all bullshit. There's no reason. And that's why I like, for my story as a veteran and as a former federal employee, I use that as an indication to say, wow, what the fuck? Like, this guy was doing what? And if I was using it, I was, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I hope that I was the guy who had a completely different perspective on it, right? Until I tried it and it saved my life. So, I mean, if I can change my mind, come on,
Well, thank you for the service, Anton, and we appreciate it. That's a big thing. And I know a lot of pro athletes, they beat up their body, and as we all do, in the construction end or whatever. And I know through a lot of people that, from hockey players to football players, basketball players, everything, that's what took them away from the what's some pain pills that everybody gets hooked to.
Vicodin, Oxy.
Hydrocodone.
There's a list. There's a list.
I used to go in my buddy's house. He was a professional. There was a jar, a bit like a cookie jar.
Isn't that disgusting?
Full of them.
That's just disgusting.
And to this day, right now, he has walked away from all of that, walked away from all of the drinking, and he just does cannabis.
Good for him. Keeps
him level, just like it's done for you, Anton. It's been a plus. And
a plus. Yeah.
A huge plus.
And it makes you, if you look at it from like my perspective, from whether we talk about veterans or disabled, anybody who is struggling with something, if you are able to control your symptoms, you're going to be a better father. You're going to be a better husband. You're going to be a better person, right? If you're not struggling with whatever symptom of the day, especially as we get older. Rick, I'm sure there's all kinds of shit that I suffer from on a daily basis that would just drive me mad if I didn't have any relief. And now, whether you want opioids or not, they ain't giving them to you. Even if, folks who need them, you can't get them. So
Adam Brook talks about
right. Adam Brook is a great example. So really what they've done is they continue to poo-poo cannabis, yet they take away the other tools that were used irresponsibly. Opioids used responsibly are a benefit to some people's lives, right? But as a culture and as a system, we allowed people to abuse them for years. And when I say abuse them, I mean the doctors abusing the way they prescribed them 100%. To people. Now we don't have that tool available to people. Now you can't go to doctors and get a lot of the medications that people were able to get before. So they've removed that, yet they still want to keep control of the boogeyman. They want to keep them in the closet, which is cannabis. And that's why you see this revolution of not only cannabis, but entheogenic plants, mushrooms, peyote, those types of things, because the system is broken. It's been broke for decades. So I appreciate and I applaud all the work y'all are doing. It's good work.
Take a look even at the herbal medicine market. They've echinacea and willow bark. They jump from solution to solution to solution. It seems like every 6 months there's a new hot thing on the market. It's because we're seeking alternatives for a more healthy lifestyle, because what we're being given right now is insufficient. Mark, I'm sorry, I jumped on you. Go ahead.
No, I think Anton hit a perfectly good spot there too, because now you say the doctors aren't giving it. What happens? It goes to the black market. So here we sit with legalized cannabis, and we can't get rid of our product. But I think MRA actually said it a year ago or so. I think Jamie I think it was you, Jamie.
If it was profound and correct, I probably am the one who said it.
Okay. The licensed cannabis in Michigan is only like 80% of the marketplace. Or excuse me, the black market is 80%. We're only like 20%.
I think Rick had some statistics on that.
Anderson Economic Group said it was 1/3, 2/3, 1/3 regulated market, 2/3 market, but they were paid for by the MCMA specifically to come to that conclusion so that they could make the black market look larger. But I think it's fair to say it's huge like that.
And when we talk about illicit too, the beauty of Michigan is we have home grow, and we have a law that allows you to just give cannabis away to people, right? So what's the line? It doesn't become illicit until you take money for the product. So if you're giving it away, perfectly fine. That isn't illicit by the law, right? So it's how do we quantify that as well? Yeah. And I think it's tough to do, really.
And those people using terms like illicit cannabis really want to crack down on that activity too. And they hate.
And when they say caregiver, sometimes they're not talking about somebody who signs up some patients and takes care of those directly connected people. No. They're talking about people who open up a business without having to follow all of the expenses and regulations and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's already exceeding limits. And there are things that could be done about that. And
no new laws need to exist in order to police that particular activity, because sufficient laws already exist.
And basically, when it was a caregiver, it was an open door to give away your ounce to your patient, but they knew right then and there they couldn't give away enough at 72 plants, and that's when they started selling it all. So that, and I there's some great caregivers out there. They take care of their patients. I have a friend of mine that he had 3 tours in Nam. You know what? His caregiver takes care of him so good, and that's what he needs. I mean,
and that's what a caregiver is. The other description is somebody who's willing to exceed limits. So it doesn't matter whether or not they are a caregiver; they are exceeding limits and then open to the risk of enforcement or consequences or what have you.
Yep. But like at one point too that we heard in our meetings, when Joe looked it up, our biggest thing that some of these people come back to us and how many do we need? How many dispensaries do we need? How many do this? Well, how many alcohol places sell alcohol?
Yeah, we need as many as we need. We have a bunch, and then whichever ones are still hanging around.
The market
in a few
decides
years,
when
needed,
you reach that saturation, not some moralistically challenged individual.
Well, not only that, we allow gas stations to sell alcohol. So, I mean, alcohol is not just sold in liquor stores, right?
And that's the worst thing too. Hey, I know you're in a car, and I know you're going a great distance because you're loading up on gas. Why don't you load up on some Schlitz too? I guess.
When I used to drink, I used to drive better.
I don't even make Schlitz anymore. About
record.
That's how bad I am with this.
The pharmacies, look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, they all sell liquor and beer. So I mean, it's
and
kind of strange.
The alcohol industry is so saturated. Our market is to be everywhere, and it's not a concern anymore. Used to be, you'd say, "Oh, I hope they keep that liquor behind the counter so that the children don't get it." I was at Kroger today. Guess where that liquor is?
Right on the shelf.
Kid level. No restrictions. Like a little extra top on it. You got to unscrew it.
Branding already starting to work a little bit.
Right there. No. Exactly. That marketing is right in that child's face.
That's a good
right
point.
In that child's face.
That's so true. So true.
You pick up your pack of smokes on the way out too. Don't forget. So as you're walking out, you get your $10 pack of cigarettes if you'd like.
Which is a little Marlboro sign on the cash register, which is a little ad right there. Again, right where kids are looking. So it's the contradiction that we have in society between what we accept as sin issues and what we are forbidding as sin issues. It's really terrible, and it always has been that way. But we're slowly evolving society back into a way where you can actually have rolling papers on the counter for sale now, as opposed to having to hide them underneath the cash register someplace. Hey, got some zigzags, man.
I remember having to buy like a big package of like Bugle Boy loose tobacco just to get like this little cheap ass pack of papers that were in there, because otherwise they weren't being sold in some places.
My place up in Flint used to make you sign a piece of paper if you bought rolling papers but no tobacco. They used to make you sign your name.
You're obviously taking this to go use for tobacco, right?
That was many moons ago. But yes, that was how bad we were back in
head shops would have tell you don't talk about stuff here. You walk in and see a sign that says address stuff.
Cannabis is like Fight Club. Don't talk about Fight Club.
Another funny thing is state of Michigan and all of us growers and what am I trying to say? We make oils, we make everything, all of our gummy, all of our processing. I think the state of Michigan has a huge hurdle to understand the business too. We are learning a big hurdle to work with the MRA and the CRA. Mm-hmm. They are making it awful tough. Tell me one business that you get into that you don't have no write-offs.
No, there's none.
Well, it's not the State Department though. That's
280E is a federal thing, but it's a very valid
need to be addressed, and so do banking issues too, obviously.
Yeah. So as we get into this, I know the state of Michigan is trying to keep an eye on everything. We're all trying to keep an eye on everything, but they've made it hard for, I would say, the little guys like us to follow the rules 100%, which we try to do. And if we make one little mistake, we didn't put like a AA in front of our number. I've heard by other growers and stuff. You know, they got hit. We've been lucky. We've been very, very lucky. And, you know, $20,000 fine because they forgot to put an A on there. I mean, they say there's no whoopses in this business. Well, we're all learning the whoopses. The CRA, the MRA, they got mistakes.
This transition is complicated.
Very complicated.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I'll tell you, having been part of the Cannabis Consumer Connection, I've seen many times when the CRA delivers a rule and they say, now we're going to give you 6 months to get used to this new rule. And we're not going to penalize anybody for the 6 months. But when this new rule kicks in February of 23, that's when we're going to start getting you. So you got plenty of notice. I've seen them do that before. You know, really, when they issue rules, give a real buffer period, I guess you might want to call it, between the issuance of the rules and an actual enforcement, just to give people a fair chance to get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them. That's pretty reasonable as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, there's new bulletins put out every single day, and you can sit there and look on get on your laptop, and then all of a sudden this bulletin comes out. This bulletin. It's not a rule. It's a bulletin. So you don't know when it's actually in effect, but they say, okay, we just sent this bulletin out. Why aren't you applying? Is it a rule?
Especially in the beginning with the medical rollout, there was back and forth and costly ones.
Yes.
Kind of on a regular basis. It has stabilized comparatively to that time.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, but
I remember times when they would issue a statement on Monday, and by Wednesday there was a clarification, and then by Friday they just rescinded the policy. That's a real story from the early days of the MMFLA.
Yep, and they took in information from many different angles. They didn't know who was providing them with the best information for what motivations, and they had to wade through a lot of stuff. Big money interest versus people like us spouting off at times, you know.
They're so much better now than they used to be. There's no question about it. They're so much better.
Oh,
You know,
they've come a long ways.
we you know, the other folks y'all are kind of competing with today. I believe Director Hanna with CRA, he did a little bit of a media roundtable and discussed, you know, the illicit product too that's getting flooded into the actual license market. So we have the black market system that I believe we've discussed about, gray market. We're outside the license system, but you have a lot of bullshit going on within
the license system.
And once you bring it into the regulated market, that's a legitimate investigative avenue.
Right,
absolutely. Yeah. And that screws over the folks who are like following the law and following the rules, puts you at a disadvantage. And I think that's why we're going to see, you know, Director Hanna's been talking about ramping up the enforcement of illicit product entering into the license system, because they've gotten, Rick, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the stories, Jamie too. They've gotten very, very crafty how they do it. And it's not right. And it's not right for folks like you're saying. If you want to put the A in front of the number, right? You don't want these folks breathing down your neck. You want to do things right. You're a legitimate businessman, and you expect to be respected and treated that way.
Just like Mark was alluding in the beginning, you were scared to make any kind of a move. You get fined there, you get like revoked your license here, you get called an idiot during that panel discussion, or you know, whatever it is.
But manipulating metric in order to allow improper merchandise to come into the system. Joe and Mark, you guys know what that's all
You should lose
right?
your license for that, man. But these
You
get like a
absolutely
fine, you know, move on.
And criminal penalties beyond that.
We'll see what Hanna is saying. He's going to clean this shit up. So that's where we want to focus enforcement activity. The other stuff could use attention when we come across it. But this concept that if you like really peel into black market activity, gray market activity, whatever you want to call it, like that's going to ultimately help out the bottom line of licensed participants. That's simply an ignorant kind of perspective. Working on tightening up the existing system, making it less costly, more efficient, more functional, that type of stuff is the way to be in competition with it. It naturally takes the place. People, you know, want to go to a store, get their stuff, pay a reasonable price for it, be, somewhat confident in the quality and do their thing. It's how we normally do shit, you know?
Well, when it all started, I kind of said, this is probably the best business since the Model T, because, you know, you look at Henry Ford and what he had to do. He had to build all the infrastructure for vehicles and webs, all of this stuff. I mean, they had one color, black, right?
It's true.
And now what we're seeing in this industry, some of these people have taken a great industry to be in. We didn't have to build the infrastructure. We were already there. We start doing, and then all, the variety package, it come automatically. Someone likes the gummies, someone likes the treat roll up, someone likes, there's so much to pick from. And what they've done is some of these bad apples, I guess, they bring things in the back door. They do this, they do that. They're pillaging the system.
Yeah, I agree.
Pillaging
Managing themselves greedily at the expense of others.
Yes. And that's why, we sat there and look at what cannabis has done per pound in the last year. Look at that. I mean, a year and a half ago, we were selling product for $2,800 a pound. We're fighting to get $1,100 a pound, where some of these growers, it's $700 a pound to produce it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's that saturated time. We expected this to happen. It happened a little sooner than some people predicted, and other states have happened. It's happened too.
Well, part of the reason we're in this situation in the first place is because the Marijuana Regulatory Agency added a license type that we had originally disallowed them to do, which was this additional grower license, which extended the ability for an individual cultivator to grow more than 10,000 plants on themselves. And I think that that's allowed some mega farms to come out and really flood the market. If we had what we originally envisioned, which was a large army of small level growers, everybody's happy. Everybody's competing at the same level because there is a cap on what you can do, 10 grand. That's it, 10,000 plants. And the excess grower license came along, and now whatever you can afford, you can grow.
For clarity, just a little bit, the State Department has the authority to make some changes in order to
create new
market issues and create new license types and things like that. At the same time, the specific cap and length of time and conditions and stuff like that were built into the different licenses in the law. So to use that ability to contradict those very specific caps and stuff like that, we took issue with and believe that it didn't really work necessarily to help fill up the inventory faster, work to help flood the market faster. And it was just kind of a misfire. That said, just what Mark said wasn't necessarily the horrible intentions. We're all trying to figure out how to do this. Maybe, it was just a bad idea that got carried out, and here we are. But
would you all say you're in favor then of a moratorium? You hear a lot of buzzwords about a potential moratorium coming up.
Yeah,
a lot of people are in favor of it. Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
And it happened in Oregon after their saturation period. Some people think that was helpful.
Well, what we've sat in there, we've learned where we said, oh, we're never going to be like California, Oregon. We're not going to be like Colorado. We followed them exact footsteps.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says.
We dodged a couple things, but yes, we're mostly in the same oversaturation market situation like
These
Oregon.
Predictable cycles are happening to us. Yeah, no question.
And of course, California is pretty unique because of its geography and its remote locations. So some of the things that happen are unique to California, but most of the rest of the legalized market, we are following right along that path.
We did some things that were pretty cool. I don't know if it would have necessarily avoided making things worse or not. I mean, I really don't know about that, but we did learn and kind of take a couple steps up from other states during our legalization process, but we're not escaping, the same cycles of stuff that we've seen happen in those other states.
And I guess to some degree, you can see what's coming and just be unable to avoid it, right? I mean, market forces are what market forces are.
We knew this was happening, yeah.
And I would shudder to think what kind of action the state of Michigan would have taken in order to disrupt the market forces that are out there right now. I'm pretty sure I would disagree with them using that power if they had it. So to some degree, this is just a natural evolution every state's going to go through, and I just don't think anyone's managed to sidestep it yet. Look at poor Oklahoma. Oklahoma made licensing so easy and inexpensive. They got saturated immediately, and now they're in a real bad contraction program, and a lot of people have lost their life savings. It's truly sad.
Yeah.
And we see some of that you know, in our smaller grows and processing, we all jumped in there 100%. You know, we didn't go to big pharma and borrow money, do this, get this, and we're set here struggling because the way I hear it, half the product that's in our marketplace is coming from California, Colorado, all these other places, and it's like, okay, they can't sell their product there, but $600, but they bring it here and they get, I think it went down to $300 or $400 in Colorado at one time, and then jumped back up after they kind of leveled off.
That's why some people believe there's still room for a drop under these already kind of horrible circumstances. We'll see what goes on with that, but you know.
Last time I saw the number, there were 1.3 million cannabis plants under lights in Michigan under the regulated market. So, I mean, that's a sufficient plant count to justify all of this of the product that we've got right now without having to look to a source from outside the state. But there's just, you can't continue to hear the stories without believing that at least they're somewhat true. Everybody talks about how other companies have taken in product that they just don't justify. Someone said that there's a company out there that is producing more oil than plants that they have under lights, and that leads people to believe that they're importing cheap distillate from other places.
Yeah, there's like more oil or distillate on the open market than there can be justified biomass to have created it or something like that.
That's a better way to say it. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you said look at a liter of oil here less than a year ago, $14,000. You know what it's now? $1,400.
Yeah.
What's the bottom? That's my question. I mean, I heard some crazy number the other day. Somebody was saying $45 an ounce. That'll be the bottom. And I said, if it goes that low, how do you keep the lights on?
It could go lower than that. I mean, Mark just brought up like in Colorado, $400 a pound.
Yep.
That's
that's
than
nuts.
That.
But it's not sustainable for that. Oftentimes you'd see companies just trying to dump product onto the marketplace in order to satisfy their immediate financial obligations. But you can't do that as a long-term as a policy. You can't cultivate. I mean, the figure is, I don't know what, $120 an ounce to cultivate cannabis or something like that. You guys would know better than I what it costs to run a zip.
Well, depending or an ounce, but I mean, some people could estimate, a few hundred per pound usually, and kind of look at it more like that. I know that Joe and Mark have been growing for a while, and you tried out a few different approaches for efficiency and R&D and that type of stuff, and determine that under normal circumstances it costs around X amount.
Well, all the growers are trying to come up with that, and of course, it all depends on the size of your building. So when I said earlier, we're not looking for large quantities. We're looking at, efficient, good product, and we want to give quality out. Now, in our position, it's a good $500 to $700 a pound to make.
Okay,
but that's the number. Yeah,
that's the number. Now the bigger places that's
$30 an ounce or something like that. Just for
16 ounces per pound. So
16 ounces per pound. Yeah.
To add it up.
So you do the math. Now there's a lot of dispensaries selling their ounces at $60. $60. Shoot, a year ago it was $400.
Now that said, what you're buying a $60 ounce for still isn't of quite the best quality. I mean, there are things that are exceptions, and that was one of the things that helped to rebound some of the other saturated markets around the country, were the willingness for consumers to pay a little bit more for the stuff that's obviously of higher, quality, more appealing, and that kind of stuff. So,
let me tell you though, I spend a lot of time standing in dispensaries watching people buy cannabis as a Redemption Cannabis ambassador, and I'll tell you, there's just a ton of people that come in looking for the least expensive.
Yes.
That's a big part of the market.
Those platinum vape 10 carts for $100. That's exactly what they want. The $40 shake ounce that looks a little questionable, maybe a little sticky, a little leafy, but it's $40.
Dry and straw like, yeah. But 40. So there's a the usable cannabis and the price point come together to determine how attractive it is. And a lot of people do want something that works but is cheap. You know,
Man, that's my point, is that drives the price down, because you always have someone, you might think nobody's going to buy this ounce. Not even for $25 would someone buy this ounce. Well, wrong. They will. So that a societal element that says we're so broke, I can only afford X amount and I want to get the maximum I can for it. That's always going to play into it. And inflation makes it more difficult too. And everybody has a tough budgetary situation. So there's a downward incentive in the marketplace as opposed to a buoying effort, like when people have enough money to be able to buy decent cannabis instead of just getting what they have, the floor sweepings that they pick up.
Yeah. And another thing is no different than when you said Schlitz. Okay, Schlitz not around.
Oh my God, yeah.
But then you go to, Miller. Then you get, there's got to be that individual where they buy the Schlitz or they buy, I don't even know, a good beer.
Michelob, remember Michelob? Yeah.
Okay. Michelob.
Well, some craft beer, like, from like
Too hard.
Kalamazoo Brewing Company or Bell's or something like that, where it's much higher quality, so you're going to pay more.
And those beers are very popular. So in the alcohol purchasing community, there is a big segment that really wants that higher quality. They'll buy the Tito's vodka as opposed to the El Cheapo vodka because it's that much better. So we're hopeful that in our industry that we follow a similar market, and there'll be that really big, not just a niche, but a really big group of people that value the better quality product and therefore drive the whole price incentive on an upward scale.
And it will.
Hopefully, the other X factor in this whole thing that I'm sure y'all are competing with are the damn labs too, right? Have you hit the labs?
Did you see that?
Let's talk about production and the cost to produce, and then you're competing with black market, and then you're competing with the bad actors in the legal market, and you can't take any business write-offs. You can't take your cash to the bank, and then you want to take that product that you put your heart and soul into, you take it to the lab. And what happens from there? Well, yeah, that's the other X factor. Have you noticed? I mean, have you seen that? By the looks on your face, it seems like that's also been an issue as well. Correct?
It's a struggle that we've been through, and the big recall that happened a year ago. I mean, don't get me wrong, that lab has learning curves too.
There's a lot of controversy there, right? Not to get this, we've talked about it a lot on the show. We don't want to go deep into details, but yeah, there's a lot of questions there. The state needs to shore some shit up. There's processes with the labs that need to be better defined and clarified.
But what they did there,
all types of stuff, yeah.
But what they did there too is they opened up that market and give too many licenses. Now you got, I think there's probably 30 of them now. There's about 20 of them less than 6 months ago. There's about 30 of them now. They're all competing for our business too. Well, that's driven their prices down. When they made their deck and started their business plan, they all thought that all of the testing is going to be around $600 to $700. Every one of them decks, and every one of them business plans are down to $450 now.
And the batch size is a lot bigger too, so more rolls through sooner.
Well, that's what happens. Like when we process a room, we might come down with 200 pounds. Well, each strain, you're only allowed 50 pounds per batch. So now I take down a room, I got to spend $3,000, and it's $450 if I have 20 or 1 pound or 50.
It's a batch by definition, yeah. However much you have, up to 50 pounds. Yeah.
Yep. So then the difference is like on an outside grow, which I think you brought this up when they were talking about, there's so much outside grow. How are they producing so much oil? The outside growers don't got to test their plants. They could say, I got 20,000 plants. I got 10 pounds of plant. Well, there's no way it is that way. So what they do is they harvest their crop. They turn it into oil. We have no idea how much they actually grew, but they turn it into oil. That's when it's tested. And who's to say they only grew 5,000 plants instead of 20 and then brought all the oil in the back door? That's what the CRA is looking at right now. And I give them a lot of kudos to go after that.
The new director says that's the focus, is to try to clean up the the regulatory schemes that aren't getting followed properly.
Yep. And that manipulating harvest size is by far the easiest way for you to introduce outside cannabis to the regulated market system in exactly the way Mark just described. Overestimate, or you under deliver, but you over report what you've received.
And I give a lot of support to the new guy that's doing this right now, because he's got a tough job.
Director Brian Hanna.
Yep. Yes. He's got a tough job, and he's got to do what he's doing. And he sent out little flyers, in the next 30 days, we're going to do this and that. God bless him. It's a great thing to do. And it helps everybody. It really does.
It doesn't behoove anyone to have a weak leader in charge of such an important department, especially in an emergent market where so many different things are flying in from different directions. You may have a problem from the science angle. You may have a problem from a legislative angle. You may have a problem from a governor's angle. Who knows? But you got to be able to adjust and adapt to all of those circumstances and still continue to push the industry forward. That's one of the reasons why I was so impressed with Director Brisboe, because he did a great job here in the state while also maintaining a national position to help other states and the nation sort of move toward a better, a more progressive way of looking at cannabis too. And that really was a dual job that I thought was really monumental. Even one of those two would be more than most people could handle. So,
he worked very hard.
There's a lot of moving parts to this industry.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And some of them you're learning as you go, and it's tough.
Nobody's going to get it right all the time. And certainly as advocates, we've disagreed with the CRA on many instances in the past. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't. The fact is, though, it's a really important job. We have 550 dispensaries statewide, plus we've got all the cultivation, all the testing, the secure transport, all the different license types that have been added, including special Class A licenses and event planning licenses. That is a lot to coordinate. It's a ton of work. And wait till Detroit comes online. I mean, Detroit's just now started the licensing process. Yes. When they really get rolling, that's going to be a fantastic place, because talk about an event center, a place where we could really have the best parties and draw people from all across the United States. Detroit's got all the facilities necessary. Once they get their head in the right place.
Yeah. Well, they fought a lot of stuff down there, and people tried to corner the market. Certain people buying this, locking that up, buying this, and that's, I think, the biggest problem that Detroit had, is trying to keep it straight. They didn't just want it flooded. I think they've done an excellent job, and it's been terrible for the people in Detroit, but they're on their way to make it right, as long as everybody plays by the rules.
And they'll probably have to wait for some of the federal court decisions to be finalized. They want to see that through that process, or those questions will be lingering out there. Forever. And there's been a lot of problems. I think some of the same stuff we were talking about before, about how the transition is very kind of difficult, and there's a lot of complex issues there. I think some of us would have liked the city of Detroit stepping up and being a little bit more proactive and sensible about it when the places were proliferating. There was 300 at one point.
Yeah.
Detroit's had their problem from day one, and this is just one of many they've had, and they're trying to work through it too, because I'm not saying this, every city is a little crooked. They just had a bad deal.
I'm suggesting an ideal more than anything that was ever going to be, really possible. That's for sure. Yeah.
What we did just see is recently in the news, Detroit crime raids by police officers have dropped 85% or 65%, one or the other, because they've stopped raiding cannabis places. Generally speaking, that was just their bread and butter for so long, and now they have the ability to focus on other things. And that's a positive sign to me.
Positive.
They've backed off on the police presence. I'll tell you, true
Dude, you
story.
remember? Oh, I'm
with
sorry.
Big Daddy's, we had a location on Mack Avenue. I had a dispensary in the city of Detroit, so I know from which I speak. And it was really tough for a while because they would just raid people and never report anything, steal all your cash, steal all your cannabis, and just never report anything. And that's just the cost of doing business in Detroit. If they got you twice a year, you were glad it was only twice a year.
Speaking of bad law and abuse of power, there for a while, I think it was based around the Wayne County Sheriff's Department would, and I think Anton has some kind of reference to this general scheme. What they would do is wait for somebody to come out of a cannabis store. Now, these cannabis stores were, somewhat legally questionable. They, and themselves at the time, gray area time, working with the city. There's, like I said, there was 300
patients only. We were very,
so that wasn't that wasn't their focus. At the same time, there was this law for a while called the transportation law. It was soon challenged and determined that it was just a statute change. It didn't change the act, so it doesn't really have the effect that it was intended. And so the deputy or whoever is standing by and keeping an eye on stuff, wait for somebody to come out of one of these stores with a bag, presumably with cannabis in it.
And if it didn't go in the trunk, you were improperly transporting.
They pull them over, and for improper transport, seize the car.
Oh my
Lord! And then $900 or something like that to get it back.
1,100 was the last I heard. Yeah, it was like $1,100. Yeah,
but it's towing fees and court costs, and there's time as well. Plus, you never know what they do to it because the first thing they do is search your car and look at the crime scene.
Taxes are going to be like that.
All your shit's gone, right? Everything that you had.
Yeah, I definitely never agreed with that approach. Absolutely.
Well, they're trying to raise revenue all the time. That's why the civil asset forfeiture stuff was so abusive because they got to keep what they took, and you start off with a little bit of pot hanging around, then you just take all their shit. I mean,
Detroit has a long history of shady shit with towing companies as well, too. So it's nothing new.
When the legalization program came in effect, one of the things it did was eliminated the excise tax that was being charged for medical marijuana. That was part of the whole deal. Once legalization came in, there would be no tax on medicine. And that tax on medicine actually made payments towards law enforcement agencies across the state because that was a program set up by the legislature under the MMFLA. And they tried so hard. They tried so hard to tap into the cash flow from the CRMLA in order to replace that temporary revenue stream that they'd enjoyed for about 2 or 3 years. And we simply we weren't having it. There was just no way that we were going to allow MSP or any other state agency to tap into that money from the CRMLA. And so when the excise tax went away, that revenue stream for the police went away also. And that's affected, I think, their efforts at trying to recapture or trying to capture cannabis dollars ever since. We fought it on several instances.
Well, right now you look at it with our cities, all of our little townships and cities. It's been huge, like for Cook Hall in here. They never had a full-time police officer here. They started making money here on licensing, and they actually hired a police officer. That's huge.
Well, it provides, I think, a deputy and a half, Bay County, that the budget allows for to stay in the township. So yeah, I mean that's
and our friend from Bangor Township had a very similar story too. The Bangor Township guy said, "Look, we fund a lot."
Kalkaska has a police department in large part for how extensively they decided to opt in on this stuff. So
yep,
and that's how we designed it, not to give money directly to the state police, which we believe were part of the problem in the first place. And also, we felt as though we're now legalizing it, so the resources that they can now redirect or save from not having to worry about this type of cannabis activity anymore would be of benefit. And and that was very specific.
Most monitoring and enforcement actions we envisioned would be on a local level as opposed to a statewide or a sheriff type of a situation.
If the locals felt that there needed more support, because more enforcement was needed, they'd have that's one of the ways they could use this additional funding and solve the problem.
Yeah.
So
there's
it's getting kind of bypassed though. There's some language we talked about at the beginning of the show that's being slipped into some bills that
We're just about at the
We
end
kind
of
of
the show.
codify some stuff. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
we have just a couple more minutes, but
Yeah.
yeah, and I wanted to revisit on that just briefly. I think I was going to say it, but we kind of shifted gears a little bit. And I was talking about the fact that the department took it upon themselves to still so just for a little bit more background, police funding for certain things is in the medical commercial law, but it's not in the rec commercial law. And but they still have essentially taken upon themselves to treat it as if it were. And so part of what they're doing is just trying to codify this. Like some money is needed for some of this implementation. The problem is that the language is so broad that it doesn't restrict anything. It just allows for paying police a lot, allowing them to be reimbursed whenever they want to, or not necessarily want to, but whenever they work with the CRA for enforcement or implementation. There's a list of things that are with it, but it doesn't restrict it all to regulatory stuff or to anything in particular. Yeah. And those extra expenses are and funding it that way and not in the way that we just described is kind of what our goal was. So
yeah.
Yep.
And I kind of thought that the department would be a little bit more open to being, having that discussion based on how they ended up kind of, being reasonable and working with us on another issue that Anton spearheaded, which was usage of funds for veteran research. That's, part of the law too, stuff like that. But anyway, we are winding down, and we typically like to do some, some final thoughts. But just to wrap up the actual conversation, I can't name them all off, but aside from Colin, I know there's Brighton, Lapeer, and Lapeer's an anti one. It would be to ban retail. And there's up north, there's Wheatland, Frankfurt, Petoskey. I think Brighton, he said there's 30 some are for, some are against. Most are for doing what Colin is doing.
Yeah.
But anything else about Colin, just to wrap up what we're talking about here?
We're just hoping that everybody jumps on board and gets the big picture and supports us, and it's been, we started our hustle back in August. I have a calendar that's marked out, and I can't believe that we're down to less than 2 weeks, Yeah. And you got a little map and how you're trying to get the message out. And I'm glad we're coming to the end. I have to tell you that.
I remember 2018 when we got closer to the November date. I was both nervous but also excited to get it over.
Yes, it's grueling. It really is. I mean, this is a small community, and it's just a proposal that we're pitching and campaigning for. But it's dynamic, and you want to deliver the right message at the right time.
It's a thrill. It's a different thrill if you've ever been involved.
No,
than anything else you've ever done.
Yeah,
anything else.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Here's something, you guys. You said at the very beginning of the meeting, we're going to set up our campaign or booth or whatever. Heck yeah! If you three are up here, you guys can deliver the message very clearly.
Well, we'll be doing a special Jazz Cabbage Cafe broadcast that evening. From our individual homes, doing an election night coverage starting about 8 o'clock to do that. So we're already planning on doing that. It's already in the.
But we're not going to come into Colin and stand 100 feet away
not.
from the polling booths and try to talk people into it. But I would under different circumstances. I'm not against that at all. And I've done stuff like that quite a bit over the years. So.
Anton, are you backing out on us too?
I'm on the other side of the damn state, and I would love to come hang out.
Yes, yeah.
Put on a big pot leaf costume and
like the Statue of Liberty at the Tax Center. Yeah, I like that idea. No, I do. I wish you guys all the luck in the world.
We appreciate.
Thank you, and thank you for having us on. It means a lot to us. It really does.
Well, I like having the conversation. If there's anything else at large you want to wrap up with too, please do.
Or also give us that Facebook page too, so folks that want to support have a way to reach out to you.
We are absolutely. We are. It's Vote Yes Committee 2022 is our Facebook group, and again, Vote Yes Committee 2022, and call Colin is. I guess if you punch in call Colin as well. So hopefully we pop up. We've been using Facebook as quite a means to advertise and get the word out.
encourage your friends and relatives in Caucalan to
100%.
support this and turn out. We have
100%.
our friend Danielle and her husband Nate live in Caucalan. They almost made it out the meeting, but didn't the other night. We can encourage them, for example.
Absolutely. That's
Danielle and Nate, please vote for this initiative.
proposal. It's the
Knowing
marijuana
Danielle, I'm sure that was
proposal.
already given. Yeah.
We had to talk her into it. Yep, it was very tough.
Sure.
It just, and it just people don't go to the polls sometimes because they forget or whatever. And and then we're just trying to get it to, get everybody there. Your
Good
voice
response
is heard.
on paper voting, on mail voting, as far
Pardon
as you
me?
know? Has there been a good response on the
Absentee voting, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there was a request for 800 and some in our township, which is, I guess normal amount. So, we marketed to them early on, but we were getting updates and they were slow coming in. So we viewed that as good, actually.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Well, here's hoping that you have great voter turnout, because in my estimation, the more people that show up, the more likely you are to prevail.
Right, yeah, no matter
because
where they
most
are.
people in America, and especially in Michigan, support cannabis law reform.
Thank you. Yes, we agree 100%. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you guys. I
very
really
much.
appreciate it.
Take care.
So cool.
Right on. So, Anton, anything you want to wrap up with?
Great show. No, I always enjoy our conversations. It's always, all the differing perspectives, but we always come back to the same thing, that the plant is king as far as to a lot of social policies and health policies, and just it makes our lives better. And
Mark's testimony was pretty strong testimonial. I mean, that kind of stuff is what actually really changes the minds.
Getting off heart medication is a big step. It's a huge step.
Yeah,
I want one more time. I just want to put this out here. Friday night. Now, in terms of Friday during the day, Rick and I will be in Alpena at Meds Cafe, and Rick will be there with Redemption Cannabis, and then we'll go up to Rogers City for the 4 to 7 actual time frame. And that same day, the location, the Meds Cafe in Lowell, will be doing a similar celebration. And in Manistee, and at Manistee, it will accompany a fundraiser for Glenn. And I think Josie will be out there and some others, and working with Valor Craft. They had a successful fundraiser at Greenstem not too long ago, and that's going to be going down at the Meds Cafe in Manistee. So
those Halloween parties should have some free doobies at them, whether I'm
all
there
types
or not.
of stuff. Yep.
Yeah, it's going
discounts, free stuff. It's a big party, and hope people show up. I'm looking forward to having a good time hanging out with Rick. I think Redemption itself will have some joints or something, if I'm not mistaken. But
that's what I was talking about. So
come on out and check it out. And other than that, Rick, wrap us up if you don't mind.
I got one question.
Oh, sure, man. Yeah, please.
Anton, how do I get a recording of this show?
You can get it on the Jazz Cabbage Cafe page. You can download it.
Yeah, we can get it.
Okay.
You'll be able to
also
you'll be able to
YouTube.
download it.
Every one of our episodes are uploaded to YouTube, so you can always get it there.
YouTube.
Any issues, let us know. But yeah, I think you'll find it pretty straightforward. It's pretty.
One last word.
Sure.
Vote yes.
Nice.
Oh, yes.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yep. You too, man.
I'll wrap it up. Let's just talk about involvement. It's about community involvement. When you see something wrong, you start a petition, you put something on the ballot, and you get it solved. When you see something wrong, you go to the CRA, you tell them about it, and you work with them to fix it. When you see something wrong, you go to the legislature and you tell the Senate, we need to fix this, and something happens for it. That's involvement. And the people that do that are a very thin slice of our community, and they are all heroes, including everyone on this broadcast today. In this time of elections, it should be more important than ever to run for public office, to participate in the program, but to vote as an individual, vote. And I can't say it often enough, even in off-year elections or even in elections when it's just a millage in your local community, those are important issues. Never fail an opportunity to speak your mind to government, and your voting is the way you do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
See ya.
These
See
guys.
you next week, Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Bless you
Good
guys.
show.
Thank you very much.
Right on.
Take care.